All right. As usual, the antitrust policy, be aware of this. Very important as we're all working. The code of conduct as well. Strictly enforced. If you have any issues whatsoever, reach out to Jenny and myself on this. I think the meeting schedule is the only thing we need a decision on. We'll just go with the quorum of the folks that are here for a voice vote on this today. But I don't think are we quite at quorum yet? Actually, I think we do. Yeah, I think we're good there. On the agenda, no chair notes. I don't think we have anyone here from Public Health Authority to speak, so we'll skip over the open on the open mic there. If you just as a general note, if you're talking to someone from public health agency and you think that it would be valuable to just kind of hear their opinion, hear what's on their mind, get some idea of their priorities, please do invite them along to speak and just even if it's just a quick introduction. Right. We do have a PHA advisory update, I think, that we can get from Jenny, right? But before we get to that, are there any updates from any of the projects? So Harold or COVID Green?
I've got one. So we're pretty much all moved over apart from the website. We have to do that in kind of 2 or 3 phases just because of redirects. So all the code repos are over. We've got DCO set up. So we're pretty much over. We've also got a note on our Slack saying for people to come to the LFPH Slack. So I think we're pretty much there. But I'd appreciate a little time with somebody to go through the checklist, because I'm aware we're the only project that has gone through the new process, trying to get up to level 3. So there's a few things missing that other projects haven't got that are actually in the requirements. So there's things like notice files, security, reporting processes that, although the Linux Foundation's got some, I want to know if they apply to Linux Foundation Public Health. So if I could spend like 15 minutes with somebody over the next week or so, that'd be great.
If you want to set up just something in the calendar, send me an invite. I've got some time either tomorrow morning or even Monday. We can sit down and go through that.
So, real quick question on the enforcing the DCO side. Did you historically not have enforcement of the DCO?
We did, but it was on the VMware site. So the VMware had DCO, then CLA, I think. And then when we transferred them over, I think it's Ryan called the DCO. Yeah. That's correct. In between.
Okay, fantastic. The reason I was asking, the reason I was asking is I've occasionally been near enough to various unfortunateness around projects that only had some of the commits that signed off with the DCO in their repo, and I've been close to situations where that blew up badly, and I've also been close to situations that remediated that before it blew up badly. I just wanted to make sure that if you were in such a situation, the remediation I've done multiple times.
Yeah, we had even the original, when we originally added it into the VMware process, we had contributor agreements signed by everybody. So every commit.
Is it reflected in the repo?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, every commit signed.
Fabulous.
Cool. Yeah, are you the signed commits? Are you is that the cryptographically signed or the signed off by?
Signed off by.
Okay, good. Okay. Okay, yeah, we can definitely, like I said, if we want to set up some time, we can definitely go through those additional questions and get those in and clarify that. Cool. And yes, you're right. There's stuff in the checklist that the other projects like COVID Green have quite gotten to yet. We need to make sure we get to those at some point here. As part of that process, we have baked in this review, right, to make sure projects are actually going to that. We haven't done that yet. Sometime in the next couple of months, we need to step back and basically do an audit of the existing projects and see where they're at. So,
yeah, I was hoping I could just lift the files from the other projects, but none of them have them. So.
Yeah, they're not there yet. Like one of the things for me with COVID Green is, if you look at the repos, not all of them are really keeping up, right? You know, like the Code Green app itself hasn't had an update in like 4 months. So you know, I'm working on increasing the participation there. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, you know, in the derived projects from it, but it's not making its way back. So I'm working on improving that pipeline. And getting it going. So there's still some work there. And I'd have to say, like I think I said it before, Harold is, you know, so far quite a bit ahead of everything else in terms of along in the process, and it's fantastic to see.
Yeah, we got some hardware designs about to be inbound as well, which are looking awesome, by the way. So
Nice.
you know, open source wearables and beacons coming soon.
Very cool. Very cool to see that activity. Okay. Any other project updates from anything? Any questions from anyone about the projects? I do know that we have some conversations. We're not, you know, like we can talk about them yet, but there are conversations happening with other projects to come in. So very soon, I would expect at least one more proposal to come across the TAC for review for a new project.
Yeah, and on the public health data hub stuff, there's still things going on in the background. My guess is that we might have some software projects related to that in late April, early May.
Okay. That's good. That's good. I am talking to, you know, having a number of conversations in with the EU Commission. There's a number of projects around venue check-in, what they call reverse contact tracing. I hate the term, but you know, venue check-in is closer. And I'm going to be talking to them about seeing if we can get some of that code in as well, because right now it's very kind of per country scattered around, with each country doing a slightly different solution. If we can convince them to pull that into Linux Foundation also, then we can hopefully start getting a single code base that we can use across. So
Sorry, was that about venues? Was that, I missed a bit of the audio there?
yeah, venue check-ins. So you know, you go to a restaurant,
Oh,
you
right,
scan
yeah,
the
yeah.
QR code and check in.
Yeah, it's called, the other term for it is asynchronous contact tracing.
Yep. Yep, exactly.
And there's work in Etsy about it, so I've been contributing to that work, but as a work item. So we've got a system scheduled in Herald for that, and we've already got the venue diary automatic collection and the QR code compatibility in there.
Okay, we should definitely talk then. Yeah, we're looking at things like the crowd notifier. The French have another solution. The Germans have another solution.
Yeah, I know the French team.
So yeah, and it's kind of all over the map. So
Yeah,
if we can pull that stuff in and kind of a common basis and work on that here, I think that'd be ideal. So
yeah, totally.
Okay. PHA Advisory Committee update. Jenny, what's happening there?
Yeah, so we met last week and had CCI come to present about vaccination credentials. So a lot of it was just sort of background and getting everybody up to speed, as well as providing, you know, summaries of the recent guidelines from the EU and the WHO. About that they've issued as preliminary guidelines around vaccination credentials. And then there was just a bit of Q&A at the end. So there were definitely questions about whether immunization repositories need to be centralized with a national government, or how does it work if you've got a distributed system with states or with provinces. There was discussion around the policy side of it, right? How does the technology and the policy side match together? So, you know, one of the questions was, does every business have to become a bouncer and check your vaccination status before they let you in? And the answer is, you know, we had to talk, we talked quite a bit about how, you know, that's a policy decision and that's not something that we're dictating in any way. Yeah, and let's talked more about some of the, you know, the US focus group for CCI, and yeah, I think there were questions like, when is this going to be ready? You know, there wasn't a lot of we do have one follow-up meeting set up with one PHA for today who to present to their broader staff with this information as well. So there is some interest, but I think there's not, at least for our US members, they're generally, I think, waiting for federal guidance before choosing to move forward with any sort of vaccination credential solution. For our international members, there's more interest. Some of them have interest, but it's moving different speeds and in different ways. Lucy, is there anything else that I should add or that you want to add? Oh, you're muted.
I think one thing, one of the PHAs asked about it is domestic reopening. I remember that's the kind of like, because a lot of like solutions now and also conversations are focusing on opening, especially international travel. So, but not too much on domestic reopening, which will bring me to one of my updates later, which is what we're doing a summit focused particularly on the interoperability issues among existing live implementations US already on domestic reopening, because that is more complicated compared to the international travel, in the sense that because you're not asking any identity information before when you're entering like a restaurant or something. If such place are adopting house pass, then how would this identity binding work if there are any identity binding? So we think that US is there's a certain context there, but also it's complicated enough for us to have a discussion. So yeah, that's kind of like also trying to respond, right, some of their ask and see what is going on, and what are the technical kind of challenges we need to work together on.
So one question there, particularly on the US side, I think is it in terms of the domestic reopening and these kind of things, is it primarily focused around the vaccine credentials part? Is there any discussion at all on things like the venue check-in, or is it just focused only on proof of vaccination?
I think it's more of the reopening, because proof of vaccination is like when you get a credential, right? How you're going to use the credential is a kind of pretty the next step. I think now like the focus, the conversation is more on like what you're going to do with that piece of credential, and not only vaccine credentials, right? Also test results, but from what we're seeing from the federal kind of communication is, I think that they want to have kind of a unified approach, a unified policy around it for vaccine credentials, but it's kind of difficult to kind of organize around test results. That's but we've already seen like the proposal came from EU, right? There's three things: vaccine certificates and proof of test results and proof of prior exposure to COVID-19. I think that's three things kind of covered good enough, at least at this point, but that's the conversation on test results and other kind of mechanism are not being, at least are not being discussed too much at the federal level. That's my understanding of
a couple things.
Ask if the group is interested, if there is interest in the venue check-in concept, if there's any push towards that, just to see. Actually, that would be a great question for the Implementers Forum Slack channel.
Yeah, there is. I mean, PHAs I'm talking to, so Australia, each state's doing its own thing. UK's doing QR code based, and New Zealand systems used throughout the world as QR code, but it's check-in only and it's manual, not automatic. And the European Union's looking at automated as a potential work item. So yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah, and it's if interoperability is going to be key, right? And we get interoperability and everything else, but the venue check-in is all over the map.
Yeah, that's why I've spent a lot of time working on interop rather than anything else. So I think we've got the answers to most of these things already. We just need to make sure the coverage is there for each of the different systems.
I think it's also, it would be nice to have just a clear list for the domestic reopening, right? For reopening, we have to have vaccine credentials, check-in, that like a very clear, these are the things that have to work, interoperability.
So a lot of the clarity, I think, will come from this process we're engaged with the Good Health Pass Collaborative, where we're taking a cooperative seat rather than say something entirely just within us, because we felt it was important to engage with the constituencies at Trust Over IP, the folks who the airline authorities and others who had engaged with Good Health Pass, and also try to really be a big tent, take a big tent approach to this. But the first thing they published was something called the Good Health Pass Principles, which tried to go into depth in a lot of these things. And they have this interoperability blueprint that they've published as well. One concern we've had going into that is that their focus has been international travel. And the privacy issues there are very different than the privacy issues when you are going from concert hall to restaurant to workplace, and all those. So we're trying to make sure that what gets adopted is not just limited to those scenarios where there's a much weaker expectation of privacy. One of those is by having the chair of the working group at Trust Over IP putting this together be Kalia Young, who works for us and is making sure that our voice is well represented there in the voice of the public health authorities. So pretty encouraged by so far what we're seeing out of that process. And their target is end of May for a publication out of that working group, which fills in this outline that's been published that I think there's the link to on the agenda to give more context for that.
Cool. Okay.
It just add to what Brian said. And so at Good Health Pass, there is a lot of great work going on in terms of figuring out the interoperability kind of gaps and challenges, and then within mainly the verified credential space. But for the summit we're trying to be kind of complementary, right, to the effort, and also feed some kind of a feedback to the Good Health Pass initiative. That's the reason why we're not only focusing on verified credentials, we're also connected with a lot of solution providers within the US who are not using verified credentials at all. We also want to understand, right, because in the short term, it won't be all verified credentials, right? We want to understand how we can interrupt with them as well. So that's another kind of like a complementary approach we're trying to take through the summit.
Okay, cool. Yeah, very encouraging to hear that that there's progress being made. Just as we're looking at the different projects and different things we could bring in, though it would just having that clear list would help prioritize, what projects we need to go out and talk to and that kind of thing. So it'll be good to see that stuff come in. Cool. Okay. Then if there's nothing else on that, we can move over. Let's just a quick discussion of the rotating meeting schedule. And then we have a couple of things we want to make sure we get to this Lucy's CC update, and then the conversation about the website and the logo. Rotating meeting schedule, where we came up in that survey. Basically 2 slots. One being this time. I'm not going to be specific on the time zones because my brain is having a hard time dealing with that. This time is the first slot. The second slot would either be 2200 GMT or 2300 GMT, and that was selected based on the selections for those of you that are in Asia, Japan, and China. Said it falls right in the middle of where you said it works. 8 yes for the folks in Europe. I'm sorry, it's pretty late. But the idea is to have the 2 rotating times. That it may not be great for everyone, but it's okay for most of us, right?
What's the running joke? North America, Europe, Asia, pick 2.
Yep, exactly. I think the majority of us are U.S. right now, or North America right now. We do want to expand that out. We want more, particularly Europe, Asia. We want more. And once we start, getting more TAC members from there, we may shift this again. But that's where we have the bias. Jenny,
I wanted to add a big thanks to our Asian colleagues that have shown up for this one, despite being nearly the middle of the night. So
yeah.
Danny, and then we've got Barry and Hong Liu from Tencent. Thank you all for being here. We see you. We appreciate it. It's
yeah, definitely. So the question there is, which of these two, the 2200 or the 2300 GMT, works best, and I'd primarily like to hear from the folks there in Asia on which of these would work the best for you.
I think the latter, the later one will work better. I'm +9. The folks in China are +8. That's Singapore also. So
Yeah.
that's 7 a.m. for me, 6 a.m. for them. Earlier than that gets a little dicey.
It's rough, yeah. So Barry and I'm sorry, how do you pronounce it? Something Yanghang Lu? Does that time work for you? The 2300 GMT?
I think this time is okay for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll just go if there's any objections to this. Okay, not hearing any objections, then this will be the new schedule. Like I said, we'll figure out whatever the exact GMT for this time slot, so it doesn't shift around. Well, that'll be the first one, and we'll go 2300 GMT for the second. We will rotate every other meeting between these two times. Okay, so in 2 weeks, the next one will be 2300 GMT.
So quick question, for the meeting in this time slot, are we routing that meeting in GMT or in Pacific time?
That's the part my brain's
well, the reason I bring this up is I can make this time reliably in Pacific time, but if you're rooted in GMT for half the year, I can't make it at all because I need a TAC and another open source community at the hour it would move to when time zone change.
Yeah, and for 4 weeks of the year, the US and European daylight savings are not the same.
Yeah. Okay. So I think
for US, and it should be US based time zone.
Then let's do that. Yeah, let's do that for this time slot. We'll route this meeting in Pacific time, and then for the other one, we'll route it there at GMT.
That makes perfect sense to me.
Okay.
Okay, but the only thing, as the physical scheduler of the meeting, I may need assistance if and when GMT changes because my calendar is rooted in US time, and so my calendar will not shift it. So
I think you can create the event in any time zone.
Okay, thank you. Danny said it today.
Yes, time zones are horrible things.
Well,
okay.
It's like I like to joke, geography doesn't really matter all that much anymore, but time zones are still critically important.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't have slides for it, but there were other things coming in later in the agenda. So we want to do a CCI update from Lucy. And then we also want to leave some time for, Ed had a question about the website and the logo. So we wanted to do that.
Collateral in general, yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. So the question there, Lucy, do you want to go first? The CCI?
Yeah, sure. I already kind of covered most of it. So yeah, the Good House Path Collaborative, like Brian mentioned, which set up their interoperability working group at the Trust Over IP Foundation, which is a sister project under Linux Foundation. And we had a kickoff earlier this week, and Kalia Yan, my colleague, our ecosystem director, she is co-chairing it. So, and also we were part of some of the work drafting groups already. So trying to plug in and see, how we can leverage the conversation, the insights coming out of the group, ongoing basis, right? When we're talking with public health authority, which actually I'm doing a lot with public health authorities where they're vendors across the world. So which is a great thing. And yeah, I shared here the interoperability blueprint, which outlined the 8 key challenges for interoperability, particularly for the international travel use case, which is a lot of them are pretty much like the same or similar to domestic opening as well. And plus, a trust framework is being worked on within the Trust Over IP Foundation as well. The idea is once like the questions are being answered, the best practices are going into the trust framework will be guiding implementations. So that's first update. Another one is so Kalia she wrote an article. It's a work in progress, but article called "Understanding the Context of Using Credentials for Travel Reopening." The idea of this is is the process itself looks simple. You have a credential, you get verified, and you get on a plane. But actually, there's so many identity domains behind it, which is making very, very complicated issue. So we're trying to kind of provide clarifications of what identity domains are being involved in this process. It will make it complicated. That make it complicated in a very kind of simple kind of layman terms, and so we can communicate well like what are the challenges we're actually working on. Also create that kind of understanding of awareness. It will be a work in progress. It won't be like perfect to begin with. So yeah, I've included executive summary here, but we already have the draft. Just now we're just editing like the full draft. So, and yeah, the last one is the summit, which I pretty much cover most of it. But we're trying to identify. So we haven't put a list there yet, but I have a list which is who we're targeting at, who want to bring into the conversation. But the idea is that we have a scope for the U.S. domestic reopening. That's mainly kind of a scoping out the conversations and also who are presenting. But for we also have exhibiting companies who are not only from the U.S. and are who we're also inviting, like the solution providers who have live implementations across the world to come and contribute to conversations. And also like it's open for public. We're not promoting it on event sites, but it's open to our community and to whoever are interested within our community. So yeah, if any members from this group are interested, there we have reach out to me, or we have a registration form that we'll use your email to sign you up for a platform where we use for this summit.
So I think you did already say, but I missed it. When is that summit?
Oh, sorry. It's April 15th and April 16th. We haven't decided we're gonna go with a second day, because first like 5 hours, 4 hours for one day is already like a lot. But we're depending on how many people we're gonna engage. We're now thinking about like April 15th and for I think 4 or 5 hours. 16th is TBD.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the final item on the agenda then, Ed, you had the question about the collateral and the website.
Yeah, so basically around visual branding and that sort of thing, because I recently found myself wanting to do a one-page slide sort of explaining what LFPH is, in case people didn't know, and part of a broader conversation. And this was not related to anything COVID related. And what I discovered was the logo is almost unusable. I don't have any visual branding collateral in terms of color palettes with which to work. And all the collateral that's available on the website is extremely narrowly focused on COVID. And I know there also been an ask about making the website community updatable via something like Hugo about 2 months ago. And I was curious, and I'd asked a question before about logo and visual branding. So I was just curious, I know that I've been referred to the design SIG, and there was some stuff about 2 months ago that seemed like it was getting traction there, which made me very happy, looked fantastic. And then I'm just curious, what's the status of all of that?
Yeah, so with regards to the visual branding, yeah, we've got a volunteer working on that in the design SIG who has been a little quiet over the past 2-ish weeks. So I've been following up to see what's going on, but I don't have an update there. And then with regards to the website, I think that the best next steps would probably be for a subgroup of the TAC to perhaps take leadership on deciding what the best path forward is.
That's a perfectly valid request. Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that. And in fact, I was kind of wondering if it would actually make sense to organize kind of the ownership of the website, kind of, and whatever the stack is there as a project that we can manage under this process as well. The collateral, that's definitely a different story, right? I mean, generally we need to have those guidelines coming from the foundation, from the marketing, or whatever team is there. So if we can figure out some process there to.
Well, and collateral doesn't have to be super complicated. So for example, behind my head on most calls is the logo for another open source project that I work with, Network Service Mesh. And when we got the visual branding package from them, it was the logo, it was an extensive color palette, and it was a slide template, including having selected, they picked a really gorgeous font for use in the collateral. So I mean, it was really, really well done. And it's one of the things that the Linux Foundation Creative Services team excels at if you sort of get the right folks there focused on it.
Ed, would you send what you're talking about over my way so that I can have a sense of, because we
Oh,
do,
absolutely.
whether we
Expectations
like a
help.
slide template or not, we do have one. And we have, we do have.
Right, but it's basically just the Linux Foundation blue template with a only slightly different logo slapped on top of it. So there's no visually distinct branding when you go to actually speak with it. So
I'm just.
Yeah, I think the desire was to be understated when we launched, to match a kind of tone of humility. So
there are all kinds of good reasons. No, not questioning the past.
no, but I understand how tied it is to identity and how much opening the can of worms around logo is tied to kind of, a broader question about how do we present ourselves to the world, not just
absolutely.
kind of a push a reset button.
Yeah, no, I understand completely.
Yeah.
So there definitely are two conversations in here. One, that branding and that and that basic collateral, and then separately the website. And I want to make sure those two don't get lost. So there's the one conversation there. We can engage with the creative team to get that stuff done. On the website's side of things, it would be great to kind of get a summary. What is the current process for the website, the decision, what content is there, just kind of an overview of the philosophy there for the site. And then Ed, kind of what in your mind is needed from a community updatable, right? What kind of updates are you talking about? Frequency, who's going to be doing those things? Is it per project? Right, just kind of get a sense of that, so we can start figuring out that process.
Well, the number one thing to that actually working out is making it something that is actually community addressable, which WordPress is aggressively unfriendly to. Static site generations like Hugo plus Netlify tend to be sort of the gold standard for that. Also, I just dropped a link to the slide I was referring to, and CNCF does a really great job with branding for their projects. So I literally have a landing page with all the branding collateral, including not the full color palette, but some of the color palette right there. And it's got PNG, SVG, etc. for pretty much everything. It is unbelievably handy to have a site like that.
Right. Okay. So I'm thinking, what we definitely need on just a future TAC meeting, we need to bring us back on agenda, revisit, see where we're at as far as the branding and collateral is concerned. And then at some point here, we need something a bit more, kind of concrete, what needs to happen with the website, a list of kind of like what changes need to be made. And then we'll have a conversation about, who needs to do that work, where that's going to come from. So.
Okay, so quick question. If we're going to break this off as a subgroup of the TAC, are we going to break that group off today, or are we going to come back next time and break that group off?
So it's a good question. I don't want to put people on the spot because without knowing what.
I'm totally fine with next time. I just wanted to make sure that I hadn't gotten confused and had my expectations properly set.
What I will say is, for everyone on the call, if everything here around the website, the content stuff, is something that that you have an interest in, that you're passionate about, right? What I say, reach out to Ed. Let's start figuring, get some discussions going, right? And let's see if we can organize, organically organize a work group. If not, then we'll make it a more formal process. Brian, go ahead.
I also think rejuvenating the design group, that in a way that make sure that we reach out to people beyond the TAC for engagement in the process, and the volunteers out there who can help us with that would be super important part of this.
I completely agree.
We do have a good stack of front-end designers and developers hanging out in the design groups. So this will be an excellent way to engage them.
My concern with the TAC, with it being a TAC work group, is I'm not sure we have the right group of people to work on that, the website, design stuff. I mean, requirements, yes, like we can put together the requirements, but the actual work involved, I don't think we have the right group of people here.
I'm an avid consumer of good visual branding and not a skilled practitioner of the art.
And I guess when I was suggesting that it be led by the TAC, I didn't mean that it was exclusively TAC members, but just that the leadership for it comes from this group.
Yeah.
And if that leadership means finding somebody else and delegating, that's also, I think.
Also, I do know with certainty the LF historically has extraordinarily good resources in this area. Again, when with Network Service Mesh, one of the very first things they did was come out and sort of a friendly way say, hey, would you like some help with your website? And then they progressively did a really gorgeous rework of the site.
Right.
So
one of the first things they'll ask for is a design brief. We work with them a ton too, and so engaging the design group in coming up with kind of a creative brief and iterating on that a bit, it could be the first tangible kind of thing to focus on to lead to a new logo, new branding, and missing content pieces and the like.
Yeah, and I would sort of leave to you, Brian, the balance between sort of the plurality of engagement there and not overstressing the creative folks.
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't think I can have the creative team at the LF like commit to engage in the design SIG, right? And be immersed in the conversations like every day. So what I could get is a template for what a creative brief looks like from them, and say this could be one of the first things that the design SIG works on.
Well, and also one of the mistakes in previous engagements with them was I at one point did sort of a full-on engage with the whole community effort with LF's creative team. And they handled it like champs, but I got backdoored to the effect of, it is not kind to engage design people with 30 or 50 response emails that say things like, I like row 2, column 6, but in purple. That's really mean, and I didn't mean it that way, and I don't want to do that to them again.
What makes for good open source collaborative software development does not often make for good design work. So
they handled it brilliantly. They didn't complain. The design people didn't complain at all about it. They were brilliant about it, but I did hear some backstory.
We are trained in our diplomacy skills.
So yeah, I think as a concrete step, then Jenny and Brian, if three of us can reach out to the SIG, the design SIG, and just kind of see if we can get things reinvigorated, and basically do a call out to the folks saying, hey, we want to do some work on the website. Let's get a working team together that's interested in doing that work, and then we'll start to collect the requirements for it and go from there.
So how about I'll take lead on that, and I'll take the next step as sending a message out to the design SIG and doing a literal call. So setting that up with a time, so that anybody who wants to join in and start the conversation there can, and we'll do some face-to-face and give some background, and then we can go from there.
Excellent. Ed, does that address what you're looking for?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Okay. So with that, we are out of agenda items, unless anybody else has anything else to discuss, anything on their mind. Particularly interested in those who haven't spoken yet during the meeting. If you have anything you've been thinking about.
I'd be curious, kind of speaking of websites, there was that initiative out of Washington with the translations. Do we know whatever happened with that?
I think
so it is linked from our GitHub at this point. It's still a Google Doc as the translations, and they also just sent me some updated privacy policies that they want to have posted. I think we continue. Our Washington partners pretty much on every call continue to mention that those translations are available, and it's continuing to be a resource. I don't think that it's something that we're going to be needing to develop further. I think for the groups that are using it, the current state of things is because they're all doing customizations in their own different directions anyway, so they're sort of just using this as a reference. So at the moment, I think we're good.
Cool, thanks.
Anything else from anyone else? Okay. So hearing nothing, I think we can go ahead and call it close. Give everyone back 15 minutes of their day. Hope you all have a fantastic weekend. The next call is going to be at the new time slot. So, all right. Take it easy, everyone. Have a great weekend.